The phrase "fan favorite" gets thrown around a lot when it comes to the sport of mixed martial arts. But ever since it burst onto the scene in the World Series of Fighting, it has been clear that Justin Gaethje was made for the fans to latch onto. He doesn't fight like a madman for us necessarily. No, it's obvious that this man needs that type of combat, because it was what he was born to do. We all know that Justin has a decorated wrestling background to pull from, the perfect weapons to negate any of the high-risk situations he throws himself into. But no, at most he uses his wrestling to stay upright, to stop his opponents from escaping the chaos. That's who Justin Gaethje is at his core, arguably the most electric fighter to ever grace mixed martial arts. A guy who somehow, someway, is still at the very peak of the sport. Let's take a dive into the rise of the highlight, and why he has been such a sensation. Born in Arizona to a mother of Mexican descent and a father of German descent, Gaethje's family had several members that were involved in the mining business, with the closest link to combat sports he had coming in the form of his grandfather, who boxed while serving in the army. Gaethje himself spent some time working in the mines as a younger man, an entire summer spent taking as many as 96 hours in 1 week. If you're looking for the thing that crafted this man's uncoachable toughness, this is a good start. Finding his way to the wrestling mats at the age of just 4 years old, Gaethje began to hone his earliest fighting approach, eventually becoming a 2-time state champion in high school. He graduated high school with a 191-9 record, progressing into college where he earned All-American status in his junior year. But while Justin was working through his college run, his extracurricular interest in mixed martial arts was about to take hold. During his freshman year, he even managed to train wrestling with notable UFC names like George St. Pierre, Clay Guida, and Donald Cerrone, who he would actually go on to face in the future. At the age of 19, long before he would turn pro, Gaethje had his first amateur MMA fight, just before his sophomore year in college. That fight, as you might expect, produced one hell of a highlight, a slam KO. That's a pretty damn rare move, just in case you're not aware. Gaethje would go 7-0 as an amateur, working up a decent level of hype on his regional scene in the process. In 2011, Justin Gaethje decided to turn pro, getting his debut matchup against a fighter who would also go on to represent the UFC in the future, Kevin Croom. Oddly enough, this fight would also be finished by way of slam KO. Gaethje did some great work on the Colorado and Arizona scene during these early years, going a clean 7-0 with 6 stoppages, a run that contained within it a 12-second KO of the UFC veteran Drew Fickett, a guy who had shared the cage with Nick Diaz, Josh Koscheck, Karo Parisian, and Kenny Florian, to name a few. Gaethje ran through him like he had no business being in the cage with him, and that victory, along with his follow-up, convinced the World Series of Fighting to take a chance on him. This promotion would of course eventually rebrand itself as what we know as the PFL these days. But when they signed this unheralded 7-0 fighter to a deal, little did they know that they were about to unleash a bona fide legend of the lightweight division onto the national stage. Around this time, we began to see Gaethje really start to work up a reputation as a ferocious leg kicker. In fact, scoring a first-round TKO in his debut, Justin would go on to get a rare leg kick TKO stoppage in his second walk to the PFL cage. He would repeat that feat 3 times during his stint with the promotion. And after posting a 3-0 record as a PFL fighter that included a KO victory over Dan Lauzon, brother to the iconic UFC lightweight Joe Lauzon, Justin was given a shot at the inaugural lightweight title. He won that fight with a KO in the first 70 seconds over Richard Patishnak to become the undisputed PFL lightweight king. Now, an unbeaten 11-0 Gaethje was starting to attract some attention for his wild fighting style. A major threat with both his hands and his potent leg kicks, only one fight in his career to date had not resulted in a finish, the type of record that he would extend to his time in the UFC. 5 defenses of that lightweight title would follow, all finishes, with each showing a more deadly but more refined version of the highlight. By this time, any true MMA fan knew exactly who Justin Gaethje was and what he was accomplishing outside of the UFC. But it was also around this point that questions started to spring up. Just how would this undeniably talented but totally wild fighter do in there against the greatest lightweights on the planet, the lightweight fighters who were under contract with the UFC? Well, as it turned out, Dana White himself had been wondering about the exact same question, and once he got the green light, He urged Gaethje to drop his WSOF title and step right into the elite levels of the best division in the UFC. And that's exactly what Gaethje did, entering the promotion with one of the all-time great debuts, a star-making performance against Michael Johnson. Justin got hurt badly at several points in this fight, but for every person who tuned in on that day who had never heard of the name Justin Gaethje, he pretty much summed up his entire approach to fighting in one clean swoop. The leg kicks, present, the insane chin and desire to press forward on display, and when Michael Johnson simply couldn't take it anymore, we got to see Justin growing in strength and confidence as he eventually found his way to the TKO victory. It was a star-making win for Gaethje, and one that drummed up major hype for his second walk. This time, the legendary Eddie Alvarez stood opposite him, easily the greatest and most credentialed opponent he had ever faced. Gaethje did exactly what you would expect, hammering at the chin of the Underground King while cutting away at his legs. But Justin would be forced to learn a very important lesson here, and it would also extend to the fight that followed. Alvarez wasn't any regular fighter of the original scene. No, he had experienced his fair share of brawls in the past, and in that third round, despite being on the edge of defeat, Eddie rebounded, working Gaethje's body repeatedly before going up top with a huge knee, KOing the highlight for his first ever career loss. Things would get worse for Justin in his comeback fight, where once again he locked horns with a fighter who was more than capable of taking his best shots. That's not to say that Dustin Poirier didn't have his moments of real worry in there, but when the going got tough, the Diamond persevered and eventually fought his way back into the contest and eventually scored a TKO win. Gaethje was at a real crossroads all of a sudden. The first two legitimately world-class lightweights he had fought had beaten him, stopped him by way of TKO. Could he continue fighting the way he did, especially now that his opponents were starting to have success? Well, as it turned out, Justin Gaethje was about to take his legacy as one of the all-time great lightweight fighters to another level entirely, simply because of his ability to adapt his style, to learn from his mistakes, and to become a much better fighter because of it. People had already started to count out Gaethje, and this, funnily enough, would provide him with the perfect circumstances to really change things up. And boy did it work well. 3 consecutive first-round KOs saw Justin comprehensively switch up public opinion. He destroyed James Vick, made him eat every word of his pre-fight trash talk. In a battle of great leg kickers, it was a massive punch that flattened Edson Barboza. And when the time came to take on his friend and former sparring partner, Donald Cerrone, the results were no less definitive. All of a sudden, Gaethje was looking at a short-notice interim title fight against one of the 2 greatest 155-pounders of his era. Tony Ferguson was on a truly insane 12-fight streak of wins, maybe the most electric and unmissable collection of spectacular fights we've seen in years. And though their 5-round war was an entertaining one, we got to see just how good Justin Gaethje 2.0 really was. In there with El Cucuy, he was patient but deadly, hammering away at Ferguson's chin, giving him a level of brutal beating that, let's be honest, Tony never bounced back from. It was a vicious victory, but Justin Gaethje was now in a title fight with the all-time king of the lightweight division, Khabib Nurmagomedov. And sure, this fight was not competitive, as the Eagle exposed Justin's lack of defensive jiu-jitsu for the world to see, but Justin's status among the top 5 was not in danger from this loss. And when he put on an instant classic with Michael Chandler, it was arguably his most entertaining bout since his debut. A win over that former Bellator legend opened the doors to another title shot, this time against Charles Oliveira, probably the most insanely exciting fighter since Tony Ferguson's prime. Hell, there's even an argument to be made that even surpassed El Cucuy. And sure enough, their 1-round war was all kinds of insane. Gaethje managed to drop Du Bronx twice, badly. But instead of chasing this legendary submission artist to the mat, the highlight elected to keep the fight on the feet. Oliveira was on a real hot streak though, and even with a formidable Gaethje across from him, he would not be denied. A hard shot on the feet dropped Justin and led to the first-round rear naked choke. Now 0-2 in undisputed title fights, it seemed as though Gaethje's decline was about to befall him. And with a return bout against Rafael Fiziev at UFC 286, it did look as though this aging warrior was about to fade to the worst stylistic striking matchup imaginable. But remember, Justin Gaethje is not half as one-dimensional as people think, and in there with Fiziev, his ability to adapt on the job led him to a closely contested decision victory. He figured his opponent out and managed to outlast him over the 15 minutes, showing veteran savvy while also taking home another Fight of the Night bonus for his efforts. There's an argument to be made that Gaethje is the single most exciting fighter in UFC history. And the scary thing is that he's seemingly not even past his prime yet. An astonishing run in the top flight.